Speaking of trials, by the way, we have this impeachment trial this week. I'm going to be flying actually to D.C. to participate in this. Not to participate. I'm not going to be, presenting any evidence or voting or anything like that. But we will be there. We're going to be covering it with Verdict, which you'll recall my podcast with Senator Cruz actually began last year during the last impeachment trial. But now, a year later, it's deja vu all over again. Groundhog Day again. And they're impeaching Trump, except maybe they're not. Maybe they're not, because there was an impeachment vote in the House, goes to a trial, but Trump's no longer president. So is it an impeachment trial or is it not? Republicans have been arguing this is unconstitutional, doesn't meet the constitutional standards for impeachment. So far, Democrats have kept a unified front, but Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, on one of the Sunday shows, on Chris Wallace's show, actually had to admit that maybe this trial is not constitutionally legit.
I think we have a constitutional responsibility to hold this trial. And I think you laid this out for Senator Paul. There is clear precedent for the Senate moving forward on an impeachment trial once being sent articles, even after an official has left office. And so, my analysis here sort of begins and ends with what is my constitutional responsibility. I don't think our job ends just because the president has left office, in part because impeachment comes not only with the provision to remove an official from office, but to disqualify them for future office. So there is still a consequence to President Trump if convicted.
Okay, so Chris Murphy gets all the Democrat talking points out at the top, right? Yes, we have a responsibility to hold the trial. The House impeached. We have a responsibility. We have to do it. The impeachment provision of the Constitution includes not just removing a president from office, but also preventing him from running for office in the future. You can tell how confident Democrats are that Trump is unpopular, that they are desperately, after he's out of office, trying to prevent him from running again. Probably because they think that no one would vote for him, right? Yeah, is that why? Not so sure about that. What he's saying here, by the way, is hotly debated, and I just don't think it's true. What the impeachment provision of the Constitution says is you will remove and prevent from running for office in the future. But you can't remove him from office. So if you can't remove him from office, you're not fulfilling the impeachment provision, so it's not legit, so you can't prevent him from running for office in the future. The Senate can't just start taking votes and saying, hey, yeah, we don't like the cut of Johnny's jib. He can never run for president. There are very specific criteria that need to be followed here. So after Chris Murphy gets out his kind of bogus argument and all of the Democratic talking points, he's pressed further and further and further, and he does have to admit, maybe this isn't quite so constitutional as we've been pretending it is.
I will admit that this is, of course, a matter of first impression. And so I don't think the case that Senator Paul is making here is a ridiculous one. I come to a different judgment. I think that clause that gives Congress the responsibility to deny an official future office requires us to take this step even though the president has left office.
Listen to those caveats. He says the case that Rand Paul is making, which is the case that all of us conservatives have been making, which is that this is not a constitutional impeachment trial. Yeah, okay, it's not ridiculous. And then the other caveat right at the top, he goes, well, look, this is just a matter of first impression. First impression, Chris? We've been talking about this for weeks and weeks and months. And you impeached the guy last year. Presumably you've thought about the question of impeachment before. Why would you say this is a matter of first impression? Because you know that the argument you're making is bogus. And you want to give yourself a little bit of an out. Fair enough. I'm glad you're at least admitting that much. It's more than most Democrats will do. Lindsey Graham, I think, described very well what this impeachment is really going to amount to, which is that it's a farce, it's a partisan exercise, and it ain't going nowhere.
Well, it's not a crime. The House is impeaching him under the theory that his speech created a riot. When you look at the facts, many people had already planned to attack the Capitol before he ever spoke.
Well, the trial memorandum from
the
trial memorandum from the House impeachment managers actually lays out a pattern of behavior. They say it wasn't just the speech. They say this was cultivated over time.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would say, that if you believe he committed a crime, he can be prosecuted like any other citizen. Impeachment is a political process. We've never impeached a president once they're out of office. I think this is a very bad idea. 45 plus Republicans are going to vote early on that it's unconstitutional. It's not a question of how the trial ends. It's a question of when it ends. Republicans are going to view this as an unconstitutional exercise, And the only question is, will they call witnesses? How long does the trial take? But the outcome is really not in doubt.
Okay, I broadly agree with Lindsey Graham here. He actually kind of undercut his own argument a little bit, though, and maybe he was just speaking loosely. I could see some ways some different ways to interpret that. But at the beginning, right, he says, what Trump did is not a crime. Now, this is an answer to the question. Look, Trump incited an insurrection, therefore, you've got to impeach him, right? And what Lindsey Graham says is, no. Lindsey Graham has said, I think Trump acted rashly. I don't think he should have. He was irresponsible in his language. He shouldn't have said what he said. But you can criticize the president for the things he said between the election and January 6th and still conclude, as I think you have to conclude, he didn't commit any crime. What crime did he commit? First of all, he didn't incite an insurrection. He said before, during, and after the riot, don't be violent, be peaceful. Much more than you can say about Democrats during the BLM riots. But what crime did he commit? So when Lindsey Graham at the end of that says, look, impeachment's a political process. Well, yes and no. It's a political process, but it does have a legal aspect too. Namely, you need to commit a high crime or misdemeanor, and then the political process takes over from there. I don't even know what crime they could accuse Trump of committing. He didn't commit a crime. That's the legal aspect. Then you move on to the political question. There's no way politically the guy's going to get convicted unless something dramatically changes, some new shocking evidence comes out between now and the end of the impeachment trial, quote unquote impeachment trial. You've already got 45 senators on the record saying they're not going to vote to convict. So it's just a farce. So much for unity and healing. Why are they going forward with this? Because all we can talk about is Trump. One, the Democrats are genuinely afraid of Trump. Two, the establishment needs to have Trump. They love Trump. They need Trump to kick around. They need Trump as this embodiment of evil that they can go after. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the subscribe button so everyone wading through the wasteland of YouTube knows that we have got the absolute top content out there.